I'm going to come right out and say it. I think aux-fed subs are a bad idea. They are the wrong way to manage the low end on any size show. If you're on an X32 or you get a full system processor, an aux, it just isn't going to work. And I'm not saying that you can't get good results on your shows. You're free to use it. But today I'm going to walk you through 4 reasons why I think it's a bad idea and then offer an alternative approach. We're going to be talking about why the mono bus is also a bad idea, some of the bad habits that we are borrowing from film world, and then how your brain actually has to think twice as hard when mixing low end if you're using an aux versus the workflow I'm going to offer to you. So if you're into making your low end sound amazing, you're probably going to love my Audio Math Survival spreadsheet. I've got that here and you can get it at the link below at producedbymkc.com/audio toolkit. And we're going to search here for the sub center frequency finder. So it's here in row 225. I'm going to put in the low end and top end range of my subs and it'll give me the center frequency. And that's really helpful to know when you're making cardioid subarrays so that you can get max summation and the most amount of energy working for you. All right, get that at producedbymkc.com/audio toolkit. Without further ado, let's jump into 4 reasons. I'm probably going to make some people angry about why you should not use aux-fed subs. A quick clarification, I'm not saying that you should lose control or not have control over your subs. What I am saying is that from a mixer standpoint, using an aux is the wrong tool for the job. So what I mean by an aux-fed sub, just so we can be absolutely on the same page, is let's say if your kick drum on channel 1 has a hefty amount of low end, right? So it's absolutely something that's going to be heard in the subs. Your main fader sends it to your stereo bus, and that stereo bus in a simple workflow is passed out of 2 outputs on your console directly to your left-right speaker. But you may have a pair of subs under those speakers. And so alternatively, you could take the kick drum, instead of having it loop through another pair of outputs of your left-right being fed into your subs, you can feed it an aux or a mix bus that is separate from the left-right out of your console to it. So that is typically a post fader send from that channel to a mix bus or an aux, and then out a pair of outputs to your subs. So you now have control over is a variable amount of kick drum that you can send to the subs versus your tops. So that's the aux-fed workflow, but we're going to jump into 4 reasons why I think that's a bad idea. So first up is I think that it muddies up your PA design and tuning decisions versus your mixing decisions. So let's go back to our kick drum example. I think you end up chasing your tail with EQ here. So let's say you have your kick drum there and it's hitting you and it's feeling pretty good. You're like, I want more 50 hertz weight and depth for it to hit me in the chest a little bit harder. Instead of saying, hey, let me grab a low shelf or a peak filter and boost that frequency, you now have an additional decision. Well, I could just send more of it to the subs. So let's say you had your post fader send of the kick channel at -3. It's like, well, I want 3 dB more. Do I put it at unity or do I use an EQ filter? And why this starts to get hazy is you're thinking about the system and the tonality of a kick drum at the same time. And so I think when you're mixing a show, you should not have to think like a system tech. You just need to think about like a mix engineer. You know, here in my studio, I never ever think about, should I send more to the kick drum of my speakers or more to my subs? I just trust that the system is the way that it is. Same thing on headphones. So this is not a mindset that's used ever in the studio. And I know live is a very different beast, but I think you should get your system, its overall tonality sounding right, trust that it's there, make some overall system tweaks later on, but then individual elements within your mix, use EQ to adjust tonality or other tools to make sure that it gets there. And then another aspect that falls apart if you're having to think about the kick drum punch in the PA with EQ versus a bigger send is if you simply send more of it to the subs, it might sound great in the room, but let's say it really did need 3 dB more 50 hertz. Well, that move is not translating to a live stream mix or a record mix. So it's already hard enough to think about a room and a live stream, but the decisions you're making to fix the problem do not translate to the live stream as well, because if you're not feeling it in the room, odds are you probably not need that in the live stream as well. So I think an aux and adjusting levels that way for low end, you end up chasing your tail. So I think that the bad thinking that we're borrowing from the film world comes from the LFE channel. So if you're familiar, the simplest surround sound setup is 5.1. You got a left, a right, a center, and then a left surround and right surround, and then an LFE channel. That's the 0.1 and 5.1. It's a subwoofer sitting in the center in the middle. And LFE stands for low frequency effects. And they always say in manuals and the way people set things up is to not use the LFE like a subwoofer, even though it is primarily for low frequencies. It is for periodic effects. Let's say a submarine goes underwater and you hear all this low end rumbling, sure, or bomb drops, yes, and you need to hear that punch in the LFE. But every speaker in a 5.1 setup should be able to reproduce the full frequency range. And so it's kind of like we're trying to creep back into film mixing and like, oh, should I use my subs as this effect or get more low end out of it? I think you should treat it as a full coherent canvas that you're not manipulating on the fly. So here's the argument goes. It's like, well, I don't want vocals in my subs, and I don't either, but everyone has a high pass filter or a low shelf. We all know that the proximity effect, getting way too close to a microphone, has a low end buildup. You can use a low shelf. My vocal EQ starting point is my high pass filter at 160, and then I have a low shelf, but with the quarter frequency way up at 1K. And if someone starts eating the microphone, I get a bunch of woofy low end buildup, then I duck that down 6 dB, right? And so the proximity effect can be fixed with EQ and a high pass filter. But here's the thing, if you're listening to a reference track, and we all have music that we're really familiar with that we put through PA, and we listen to how it sounds, that full mix is going to your mains and your subs, and any vocal in that full mix is also going to your subs, depending on how low they get or the frequency content. But if we are making decisions on this PA sounds great, I think it sounds good with the reference track, the entire track is going everywhere at once. We are not selectively picking out the vocal out of a reference track and just sending it to your tops. So why should you mix that way? It should be a complete canvas that you're painting on. Okay, so that's point number one. It muddies up your PA decisions versus your system design decisions versus your mic decisions. Number two, a quick one, you don't have an accurate transfer function during the show for your low end. So a transfer function is something in a tool like Smart or Open Sound Meter that compares a reference microphone signal in the room to an actual reference looped in signal from your console. So during show, the software will get on channel 1 your measurement and channel 2 your reference. So channel 1's that microphone sitting in front of house, and then you can take a mono summed version of your mix, feed it into channel 2, and it'll compare it. And it'll say, hey, how different is the room sounding from the direct feed? But if your subs are getting a different signal than your full mix, and then that's no longer coherent, so you can no longer get accurate low-end data. I'm honestly not using this a ton on shows, but if you wanted to, you can't do it because your full mix and your subs are no longer correlated, so you cannot get that data. So a little bit esoteric, but I think it still matters. Number 3, it limits your routing and processing capabilities. So I like to use subgroups when I mix and shade those if I need to bring overall instrument groups down or apply EQ across it. But the thing is, you cannot send a group to an aux unless you're on some very specific consoles. I know I haven't used every console in the world, but I know the D-Live can do this. I think the SQ series can do it as well. But on consoles that are prolific in everywhere, like an X32 or M32, you can't do that. So you are limited on if you're using subgroups to mix, routing all your drums to a pair of channels, all of your electrics to a pair of channels. I have to still use the individual channel bus send to go to my subs. So any of the processing you do on the drums is not reflected in the sub bus send. And secondly, from a processing standpoint, there are only certain processing capabilities available on something like a matrix versus a bus on some consoles. So you get a few additional filter types, a little bit more specific. And the example that I'm talking about is on the X32. On the matrix, you can get Butterworth and Linkwitz-Riley high pass and low pass filters on a matrix, but you cannot get them on a bus. So I like being able to have, if I do not have an external system processor, I like being able to have that so I can make better filter decisions or just have the filters that I want available to me. Okay, and lastly, point number 4, it's another variable to think about when you're troubleshooting. We talk about how you have to make 2 decisions when mixing. Do I want to boost the send to the subs or use EQ? But there have been shows early on in my career where I ran aux-fed subs, so I've done this plenty, but I accidentally left the walk-in music pre-fader to the subs. So I fade out walk-in music, the band goes, I'm like, what's going on in my subs? And that's my walk-in tunes going to it. And so that's just another place where there can be a gotcha moment. And you should say, Michael, we'll get your crap together, do it right. You're absolutely right there. But that was a specific moment that I failed to check on what's going on. And I think eliminating variables, aka not having another place to think about where is my signal going, can speed up your troubleshooting process and reserve precious RAM when in the middle of the show and making decisions. Because we're already making so many decisions per second. We're analyzing the mix. We're having to think about it from different places in the audience. What does the client think? Are the artist monitors okay? You're making so many decisions at once. So I think eliminating that frees up your brain to focus on getting a better mix. And then I can know for sure that the any low end issue I'm hearing or not feeling right, it's not a send value. My faders in front of me feel responsive and that they're going to follow it absolutely, and I can trust that there are less points of failure or less variables in between what I'm doing with my mix to my subs. Okay, those are the 4 points. Recap those real quick, and then I'm going to talk through how I do run the signal processing and routing for my subs. Number 1, it muddies up PA decisions versus your mic decisions. Number 2, you don't get an accurate transfer function during the show of comparing your straight mix into your interface versus a mic in front of you. Number 3, it limits your routing and processing capabilities, mainly being you usually cannot send a subgroup to an aux. You can't; those are two of the same bus types. And number 4, it's another variable to think about when you're troubleshooting. So you can end up second guessing yourself. In here, you have like a big low end boost on the kick drum, but the send is down at way down at -10. So it's going to sound weird in your live stream and also weird in the room. So it's just competing priorities there. Okay, so what do I do for sub control? What is the alternative workflow? So at the end of the day, everything in my mix that would be going to the main PA is funneled down to my left-right, my stereo bus. Even if I'm having to run off fills or like a lobby feed or whatever, the entire mix goes there first, and then I route my stereo bus to matrices. So matrix 1 and 2 is always my PA left, PA right, and then matrix 3 is my front fills, and matrix 4 is always my subs. That's pretty industry standard. If you're touring, if you're a system tech, you'd probably be receiving that, but that sub send could be an aux and it could be on a matrix. So why on a matrix is that I can trust that my left-right mix will always stay intact. It is the mix decisions I'm making with faders all funneled down there, and I can pop on a pair of headphones and hear my left-right and know that's what's going out everywhere. So if I send that to my matrices, I'm able to use EQ, shading, processing, anything on those to make my PA decisions, but then my left-right bus is still left intact. So in the show, if I just hear a 500 hertz build out, but I wasn't hearing that in the PA, that might be in my mix. So I can just go ahead and go to the left-right bus, apply EQ there, and not have to touch my matrices. And then the matrices also preserve the level balances. So I'm setting my left-right mix to 1 and 2 for PA left and right, and then number 4 is for my subs. I've already set that post fader at Unity, and then I can fine tune that matrix level to actually get my sub level in balance with my main. So it's only one single point where I can actually send a different amount of low end to my subs versus my top. So it's only one single point to either mute my subs or unmute them. So even if I had an external system processor, that's how I'd break down my mix is 4 matrices, PA left, PA right, front fill, and subs. Even if I got side fills or delays or anything, it's going to pick off my PA left-right feed and almost treat that like my main mix. And I just like being able to have specific control over my front fills as far as muting and subs as well as far as muting. But then I do all my filtering and time alignment in the system processor. Okay, so let's get lastly to the mono bus. Why should you not use that? That's a common way, like, well, I save a mix bus, I save a matrix. Why do I not do that? First off, how I use the mono bus is I have all my channels going to it, post fader, just like the left, right, and that becomes the mono mix that I'm using to feed into Smart. The only thing that's not translated into that is any EQ decisions I'm doing on my left, right bus, so I have to go and make those there. But that just gave me a ready to go mono sum mix without eating up a matrix to send in to compare to my measurement microphone at front of house so I could see a transfer function. So why does it not work well for subs is that you might have a variable send to the mono, so it's acting just like an aux, and even if it doesn't, it's still functionally acts different than if you send your left-right to a matrix and then the mono bus out, because you could still send something to your mains and not your subs, so therefore decorrelating the signal, and you can't get an accurate transfer function measurement. All right, so I would love for you to let me know below if you vehemently disagree with me. How are auxes important to your workflow, or which one of these points maybe opened up your eyes to a different workflow of using your left-right mix fed to 4 matrices, PA left, PA right, front fills, and subs as a baseline starting point for your shows. Don't forget to get my Audio Mass Survival spreadsheet at producedbymkc.com/audio toolkit. It's also at the link below. My name is Michael. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next week.